One of the ways that the TCU season could go sideways showed up in the first scrimmage over the weekend, and it has me a tiny bit concerned going into the season.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We're brought to you today by Gametime. If you need tickets, check out the Gametime app. It's super easy. A couple clicks of a button, and you will have tickets directly on the app. TCU Horned Frogs, not in the AP preseason top 25 poll. Not shocking, but I will say, even though my expectations were low, the AP poll still kind of fell below where I thought TCU could be in the receiving vote section. However, they will have some good opportunities early in the season to rectify that. But we start today with fall camp. As we've been talking about the last few weeks, we're gearing up towards the season opener against North Carolina. TCU had their first, at least that was kind of open to the media, scrimmage on Sunday evening. And looking at what Steven Johnson and some others reported about practice, it felt like the defense won the day, at least the first team defense. Now, second team defense had some scores. Ken Seals is having a really good camp. Obviously, he gets the benefit of going against the second defense, but his name keeps showing up. Man, he's making good throws. I wouldn't say I've slowly come around to the idea that he is a really good backup quarterback, but I can definitely see the vision if something happened that he could step in and do some good things. But the first team offense, there were some drops, some 3-and-outs. Now, late in the scrimmage, reportedly, Josh Hoover to Eric McAllister, like a 47-yard pass, which is good to know. But it highlighted something that I've been worried about. Now, I'm bullish on this TCU team. I think they're going to be playing in Arlington for a Big 12 championship. They've got a lot of returning players. I thought they closed the season really strong last year. I love where they're at from a roster standpoint. I think there are two main ways that this season could go around. One on either side of the ball. And this is, I'm not including like injury to player X, who's really important, because obviously that could make the season go a totally different direction, but that's every team in the country. But for TCU, on offense, they're replacing essentially their entire passing game outside of Eric McAllister from a receiver standpoint. Those wide receivers were elite players in college football. Jack Bech, Savion Williams, J.P. Richardson, great players. Now, the reason we have optimism is because the other part of that equation, Josh Hoover, is back. He's got another offseason under his belt. We saw him take the turnover margin down late in the year and stop throwing the ball away. He should be confident, should be ready to go. But he's still integrating into the offense a lot of new skill players. And that can take time to get the timing down, right? So if the offense gets off to a slow start, which honestly, when you think about it, they did last year too. I mean, that Stanford game, there were some long scoring droughts. The Long Island game, like, can't really gather anything from that. SMU, again, kind of a feast or famine. Now, they got down 21-0 before the game even started. But the theme of the first half of the season was a lack of complementary football, and the defense was having their growing pains, and the offense would just go through these droughts. Think about the UCF game. They're on fire. They're doing everything right. They're scoring every time they touch the ball. And then in the second half, that stops. You have some 3-and-outs, some drives stall out, and suddenly you're on your heels, right? So with all these changes and what we hope will be an improved run game with a reshuffled offensive line and potentially Kavorian Barnes back there as your starter, Jeremy Payne and Nate Palmer will have something to say about that the rest of camp. Those guys can come in as well and be good change of pace players. But if there's a transition period in that week 1 game against UNC, and then week 3 against SMU, do you find yourself searching for answers? Because it won't take much with the tough schedule that they have for you to find yourself with your back against the wall early, right? And that SMU game, now, thankfully, and kudos to TCU, they figured it out after the SMU loss. They also had the Houston loss, but they figured it out. But in the past, SMU's been a good measuring stick for, like, if you lose that game, it can really derail the whole season. I don't think that's the case this year because SMU's coming off a playoff appearance, but you get my point. So it's imperative that this team is ready to go right away. Now, you've got time. You've got some time to figure this out. You don't play tomorrow. You don't play this Saturday. You can work on the timing routes, the communication, the nonverbal communication. You can rep it as much as you can, but there's still something different about playing live and real football. I will also say, and former players, I know there's some out there that listen to the show or watch it, please jump in and give me some feedback on this. In fall camp or spring practice or whatever it is, you want there to be a give and take, right? You want there to be days where the defense clearly wins and the offense clearly wins. They punch back. And we've seen that at times over the last few weeks. Iron sharpens iron. Competition brings out the best in everybody. All those cliches. They're cliches because they're true. You're going good on good before the season starts. Your best players against your best players on offense against your best players on defense to give each other a great look and to push each other to be better. You also, generally speaking, like your defense should be ahead of your offense early in the season or in the preseason because there's less, I mean, there's different factors to it, but there's less timing and understanding each other and working those things out. Offensively, you got to work out all the formations, all the plays, get all that going. So it could be as simple as just, hey, early preseason, still figuring out some things. No need to worry. But it does give me some pause. And I would say the other thing, like I talked about the offense, right? So offensively, the thing that could hold this team back is if you just get off to a slow start. If you find yourself needing a few weeks to work things out and get to a place where you're playing well, and defenses take advantage of that. The other side of that is, and you could spin this based on the scrimmage on Sunday in some positive ways, if your defense doesn't take a step forward, it's going to be tough to reach your goals. Do you need to be like a top 10 defense in the country? No. Now listen, I'm all for that. Don't get me wrong. If that happens, that's great. But you don't have to be there. You need to be significantly better, though. You can't have games like that early in the season last year where there was just no stopping the other team. And we talked about complimentary football and those turnovers. Josh had to figure some things out, but a lot of those turnovers were, man, we find ourselves down by 10 or down by 14 or this been a back and forth game, and there's no margin for error. You feel like every time you touch the ball, you got to go score because you don't know what the score is going to be like when you get the ball back. Right? And so that put him in some scenarios where he was forcing the ball into coverage. And he cleaned that up late in the year. But those are the two things that if it doesn't go the way we planned, in my mind, that'll be the reason. It's either offensively, you get off to a slow start. I think at the end of the day, like a Kendall Browse, a Sonny Dykes led offense should figure it out and be prolific. It's going to come down to efficiency, but they'll be prolific and put up points. But does it take 3 or 4 weeks to get there? And as I've said many times, this is not the type of year with the schedule the way it shakes out that you have that opportunity to work some things out in the middle of the season or early in the season and still pick up wins, right? Like it's just not that type of season for TCU. They're playing good teams right off the bat. So you got to be ready. This receiving core has to be close to elite because that's the group that they're replacing. And that's the production that they're replacing going into 2025. And Josh Ewer's part of that too, but I have confidence in him. I think it's the new guys getting on the same page with him that's going to be the key. When we come back, I'm disappointed in the AP Top 25 poll. I'll explain next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. If you need tickets, check out the Gametime app today. It's super easy to use. A couple clicks of a button and you have tickets straight to the app. Download the Gametime app, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order. They make it super easy for you. And also, they're very upfront. There's no hidden fees. There's fees, but they tell you what they are so that you don't hit the checkout button and suddenly you're like, wait, I'm paying $30 extra or 40 or 50 more dollars than I thought I was. What happened? Gametime itemizes it for you so you know exactly what you're paying for. They show you a picture of what you're going to see when you sit down. So you know what to prepare for. Last minute deals, you don't have to be totally on top of it. You can wait a little bit and see how things go. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions, as always, do apply. Gametime, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Okay, we got an AP preseason top 25 poll, which this is the last big list that we get, honestly. We are about as close to the season starting as we can be. And there's a narrative out there now with the college football playoff that this doesn't matter. This poll doesn't matter. That's not true. Like, is it the end all be all? No, because the college football playoff poll is the one that matters ultimately. But I'm not going to pretend like this doesn't inform the decisions of the committee. I'm not saying they just copy paste what the Associated Press poll says, but it factors into their decision making. And I think preseason wise, you can make up that ground quickly. It does sort of play into, though, even late in the year, how people view you. Are you a Cinderella story that caught lightning in a bottle, or a team that expected to be there? And oftentimes the teams that you expect to be there, sometimes they'll stumble early in the season. It's like, well, rough day at the office, whatever, they figured it out. They're still the best. So it does matter. TCU is not part of the top 25 poll. That in itself is not surprising. I told you on yesterday's show, if you listened, that I didn't think they'd be there. But I still found a way to be annoyed by how this shook out. So here's the top 25. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this graphic here. Texas, number 1 in the country. Penn State, number 2. Ohio State, number 3. Clemson, 4. Georgia, 5. Notre Dame, 6. Oregon, 7. Alabama, 8. LSU, 9. Miami, 10. Arizona State, 11. Illinois, number 12. South Carolina, number 13. Michigan, number 14. Florida, 15. SMU, 16. Kansas State, 17. Oklahoma at 18. A&M at 19. Indiana at 20. Ole Miss at 21. Iowa State at 22. Tech at 23. Texas Tech. Tennessee at 24. And then Boise State at 25, rounding out the top 25. So as far as opponents that TCU plays, they'll get number 11 Arizona State early in the year on the road, number 16 SMU, number 17 Kansas State, and number 22 Iowa State. Potentially number 23 Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game, right? Like, we're all for that. In the others receiving vote section. So this is like, if they're going to rank past 25, this is 26, 27, etc. BYU and Utah and Baylor back to back to back, right outside the top 25. In that order, BYU, Utah, and Baylor just on the outside looking in. TCU got 4 votes. If they ranked it numerically after the top 25, that would put them at 41st in the country. They're sandwiched between Iowa and Pittsburgh, also near Army and Colorado. So I didn't expect TCU to be in the top 25. But it's discouraging to me that they're that far off the pace. And I think it just speaks to they'll have a chance to fix this early in the season. But they've fallen off the radar of a lot of major players when talking about media and college football movers and shakers. And they're just not in the conversation right now. Now, again, you play North Carolina, SMU, Arizona State, all within the first 5 weeks of the season. So you have that opportunity to put yourself right back in the conversation. But, I mean, you look at BYU, right? Like, BYU's coming off a really good year. No doubt about it. Great season. But they lost their starting quarterback in Jake Retzlaff. They've got a QB battle going on. And I realize Kalani Sitake is a good coach. They play a particular brand of football that's physical. And you need a quarterback, but it's not like they're leaning on the QB to go out there and throw the ball 50 times a game. However, some major roster turnover late in the offseason, losing some players. Utah coming off. I mean, I get it. They added a very dynamic quarterback in Devin Dampier from New Mexico. But they were 4-8 last year. TCU beat them on the road in an ugly game, but still they won that ball game. I'm not going to sit here and scream and pound my fist on the computer demanding that TCU be in the top 25. But I don't think there's a lot of people outside of our bubble, outside of our kind of circle, that understand how good this team could be if they execute at a high level. And ultimately, they'll get the chance to prove that. But the Athletics, they put together like a top, I guess it ended up being like a top 136. They ranked all the FBS schools. And they had TCU in the 30s at 33. AP poll has them in the low 40s. They're not totally off the radar. They did get some votes. But teetering on the edge there, right? Of being a team that's not a factor in the preseason conversation. And, you know, everybody feels like they can win the Big 12. Like it's a league where everyone's stumbling around saying, well, you know, if things break the right way and now with revenue sharing and more of an equal playing field, we've got passionate fans, donors that are energized. We should be able to run this thing. It's never as easy as it sounds, but I do believe TCU's in a unique position because of their location, because of their donor base and fan base, to really put their best foot forward. The issue is you've got a coach right now that is coming up on a season where he has to make it happen. And that will dictate kind of the momentum around the program in the near future, right? But that's your top 25. Texas sitting there at number 1 in the preseason AP poll and the coaches poll. It's hard to argue that, but I will say, like, is it possible that Arch is not everything he's said to be? Like, not that he's a bad quarterback, but just that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get comfortable and get to a place where he's playing really well. I know he's incredibly athletic, played well in limited action. I do think it's different being a full-time starter, though, but we'll see. The great thing about it, we're going to get games soon. And TCU won't have, I mean, they'll either have an argument or they won't with actual results to back up what they're saying. But yeah, four opponents in the top 25. Nobody in the top 10, but Arizona State right on the outside at 11. SMU and Kansas State 16 and 17. And then Iowa State at 22. You're playing BYU. You're playing Colorado, playing Baylor. 3 teams that received votes. Big 12 is not a bad league. Like, I get it. You don't have a lot of top 15 teams or top 10, whatever. I understand. But there's good parity and there's good teams that are going to be battling it out week after week. When we come back, freshman wide receivers ready to play. We'll talk about it next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. So if you missed it yesterday, I talked about Jacoby Hayes, who was a late flip. He's a true freshman, first off, to give you some context. True freshman wide receiver from Midlothian. And he was supposed to play at North Texas. He was committed to North Texas, was going to sign. At the last minute, he flips and signs with TCU, which was an interesting pickup. I mean, I remember on signing day being like, okay, cool. They added another wide receiver. You always trust Malcolm Kelly and his evaluations and Sonny Dykes and his ability to find skill players. But his name kept showing up in these practice reports. And then Sonny Dykes goes as far in his last press conference to say, look, this dude's going to be playing against North Carolina. And he went out to venture to say, like, he's going to play in the opening play on special teams, probably. So in high school, he was a kick returner. And I was watching his tape, and I would also see him block kicks at times. And so maybe he's going to be running down on kickoff as well. But he's shown up and has just forced his way into the rotation and is also making plays at wide receiver. It's not like he's just a gadget guy, even though I think that'll be primarily how he contributes this upcoming season, at least to start the year. But he's also making plays at wide receiver, catching the ball, breaking tackles. So it just caught my eye because all the talk about like Ed Small and Terry Shelton, I still think those guys are going to play a lot and do some good things. But here's Jacoby Hayes, who was under-heralded recruit, making waves in fall camp. I believe that inside wide receiver spot might be the most, well, it's the most interesting battle in the field to me now. Because I think like right guard, I just believe Carson Bruno's going to win that. I know they're saying there's a competition at tackle, but I don't believe that. And then I think on defense, like Austin Jordan and Kylan Jackson. Kylan Jackson had a good scrimmage the other day. He's getting some high praise about being physical. And they're fighting for that spot that Abe Kamara left. Hybrid linebacker safety type player. But I think at safety, like they're going to split some time. I feel like Carson Bruno is going to win that right guard spot. But at slot, I don't know. I mean, I sort of penciled in Jordan Bailey as a dude who could step in and be the guy, but he hasn't been available. He hasn't been healthy. Major Everhart, similar story, even though he's been healthier this camp. And so possibly he steps into that role. But then Ed Small has been fantastic. And he's a true freshman as well. He could get out there and play. I know Hayes and Manjack are both working at outside wide receiver right now, but their skill sets to me translate well to the inside slot position. So I do kind of wonder aloud, like if that changes, because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to getting your best players on the field, whatever that looks like. Like AJ Ricker, the offensive line coach, talks a lot about he's just trying to find the 5 best guys. Now, there's not always position flex, but for the most part, like he's just trying to find 5 guys that can go out there and play. And he'll figure out the rest later. Well, same thing at wide receiver to a certain extent. The physical attributes dictate some of that, but you're trying to find the best players to go out there and make the plays and line them up in different spots and formations and motion them out and in and just try to have ways for them to be effective within the offense, right? So I could see that changing as the year evolves and progresses. But right now, it feels like a Major Everhart versus Ed Small battle. One of our YouTube listeners or viewers commented Ed Small when I was talking about impact freshman as just a dude who's going to come in and play right away. And that's been the word really since he signed, is that he's set up to do that because of the combination of opportunity and talent and ability. But I don't know. Hayes he's an intriguing player, and we'll see where he ends up lining up when he does get chances as a wideout. We'll be back tomorrow. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, we're trying to get to 1,500 subscribers before football season. We're like 8 away. So do that. We're also free and available wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody.